Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 3 of the Q&As, so let's go ahead and knock this out. First question. Would it be possible to get up to 220 pounds at 14% body fat at a height of 5'11 natty? It's in fat-free mass index of 26.5, which is over 25, but since ffmi is used for contest condition, would it be possible to be at that weight natty, fairly lean but not contest lean? At least for people who are genetically gifted. I already know because everyone in my family is huge. I'm 200 pounds at 14% body fat and haven't lifted for very long. All right, in the context of what you said, if not contest lean, over 10% body fat, and someone who's genetically gifted for gaining muscle, yeah, it's absolutely possible. Absolutely possible. It's not easy. Not easy. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of work, but it is actually possible. So people need to remember that when we're talking about that 25 and stuff. We're talking about peeled guys. We're talking about guys who are ripped, not 14% body fat. Totally doable there. Again, with reasonably good genetics and years of hard work. All right, next question. Hey coach, I am just getting back into lifting after 4 years off. Currently running a 5x5, 3 days per week, full body that includes squat, deadlifts, bench press, rows, chin-ups, and overhead press, as I seem to remember you saying these 6 movements being the major human movement patterns. If I wanted to add slightly more volume and variety to aid in lower body hypertrophy and explosiveness, would you recommend the GHR or a combination of power cleans and power snatches for this purpose? If you're talking about just adding some extra volume, but the GHR, that's going to be hamstring. That's not going to be your full lower body. So in that context, not so much. And then when we come to explosiveness, I can't compete with cleans and snatches. Like, yeah, to work on some combinations of power cleans and power snatches if you want to maximize your explosive potential in the context of the strength and hypertrophy you're going to get from these other lifts on a 5x5. And I mean, I think, look, you're going to do those other 6 lifts, you do cleans and snatches, and you work on those 8 lifts. You're going to be good to go. You're going to be completely good to go. You should not have any real weak links athletically, probably in terms of muscle mass, unless you develop some little minor things that you might not like from a bodybuilding type perspective. But overall balance, strength, everything else, you should be able to get everything that you want out of those 8 lifts, over the next year or two. No problem at all. So I think that selection is good for your goals. All right, next question. Regarding a lifter's progress potential going down each year, what if someone works hard on the basic barbell movements but can't seem to reach your novice standards in 1 to 3 years? Will this person still progress slower each year if they can only bench 185, squat 290, and deadlift 405, for example, after 2 years of training? Yeah. Truth is, if a person takes 2 years to reach those numbers, either their training methods were very, very flawed, and then they've come back and made a lot of those new gains in the second year, because they goofed off for the first year and didn't follow proper training, or they are just genetically in the bottom end of the range for gaining muscle and strength, which happens, which would be another explanation for being there. Or again, their lifestyle wasn't conducive, meaning they didn't eat enough food, they didn't eat enough protein, didn't get enough sleep. There could be all these other factors going on, but if they know that they were eating enough, they know that they were resting enough, they followed a proper linear progression program, and they're still at those numbers, they're just not genetically gifted in that area, and they're going to see diminished returns just like everybody else. But if they're only at those numbers after 2 years because, let's say, their training wasn't on point, they're not going to slow down as nearly as much as other people will. They're not going to slow down as much as other people because they really didn't milk out their gains ideally during that time frame. So there's several different factors that you need to look at when asking that question. But will they see probably slower progress after that? Once you deadlift 405 and squat 290, yeah, you're going to see slower progress after whatever you did to get there. Of course you are. That's reality. You're still going to see some diminished returns. All right, next question. Hey Jason, do you think that closed grip pause benching has a different strength standard than the ones you're putting out? And if so, what would they be? I don't know, probably 5% less. So in other words, if a strength standard is 300, just listed for, normal bench, which people will argue whether it's real pause, touch and go, any of that, talk about a closed grip of the pause, I would expect 5% less. So I mean, if a strength standard is 300 there, then, you know, probably 285 or so would be about right. I think that's about where I would place it personally. But again, we need to remember those strength standards are because of those variations in form and leverages. Those are somewhat loose standards. Those are not set in stone if that's your exact thing. Now, it is a comparison of your strength to other people, but you do need to keep in context, though, that when you're making strength comparisons between other people, it has to be the same lift. In other words, a closed grip bench press with a pause is not the same lift as a wider grip touch and go. It's not a comparable number anyways. You would expect the person to lift less with that other lift, because the person with the higher number on the other lift, the wide grip with touch and go, would lift a lot less, 5% or even more, even 10% in some cases, over someone who's pausing with a closed grip, even themselves, even if they were to do it themselves. So again, you do need a valid comparison if we're going to compare strength from person to person. And that's why we have standardized lifts and rules for that in strength sports, so that you can actually legitimately compare two people of what they're actually capable of doing in the same movement, right? So that's a valid comparison. All right, next question. Are there any types of GPP, tire flips, moving heavy objects, heavy bag training, prowler, sled, etc., that can aid strength progression on barbell movements? Man, that's a tricky question when you're talking about GPP carrying over to your barbell movements. If a person did a large amount of GPP and then they started doing barbell movements, would they start and progress initially much, much, much better than someone who is untrained? Absolutely. If you have spent a year running linear progression on a barbell squat, or 6 months, let's say you're 6 months into a linear progression on a barbell squat, if you add GPP, will it help you gain strength faster on it? No, it probably won't, because now you're trained on the movement, and its specific training is what increases that. GPP can build a good, well-rounded base. It can help with your overall strength. It can help with your overall conditioning, but it is general physical preparedness. And if someone has done a lot of GPP work, it will give them an advantage going into something specific, right? In other words, if you did a bunch of GPP work and got into just good shape doing it, and you started sprinting compared to an untrained person who would be sprinting faster initially and even a month in, the person who did the GPP work. Same thing, who would squat more, who would be able to press more, all that. So the person who did the GPP, right? Should be common sense. Should be common sense. They're obviously going to be the one who gets better results from that. They're going to be the one who gets better results from that because they've already built a foundation, and they have a varied amount of conditioning and strength and everything else that they've done with that GPP. But once you're really training the movements, no, it's very unlikely that you're going to see them start carrying over to it very much. And in some worst case scenarios, it might impede it from a recovery end because of the recovery needed for the GPP when compared to the specificity of training you need to get stronger on a barbell movement. All right, next question, and possibly last question of the week. Doing starting strength at the moment, novice, and replace the power clean for rows from the floor. I'm just having a hard time progressing on this one lift. Tips. Okay, you know, I'm actually familiar with Ripto's stance on this, and Ripto would tell you the barbell row is not a replacement for the power clean. So he would actually be upset at you doing that. He would tell you, unless you're a much older lifter who maybe can't power clean, then you need to be doing power cleans. That's what he would tell you. In the row, and I'm going to quote him again, the barbell row is not a replacement for the power clean in this program. Just so that you're aware of that. So throwing that out there. All right, rows from the floor. Yeah, they're hard to progress on. They're hard to progress on. So my tips to you would be get in there, work on form, work on getting tight, and progressing as you're able to. I mean, it's like any other exercise. What do? Add weight to the bar every session. When your form breaks down and you can't lift the weight, you reduce it slightly and then ramp it back up again. All right, that's my tips for it. All right, you need to learn to pull in tight. You know how when you get on a deadlift and you pull the slack out of the bar? You pull the slack out of the bar on a row off the floor each time the same way. So you ratchet up tight, pull it off the floor. Just like with anything else, if you're eating enough and sleeping enough and you add weight every time, and then when you start failing, you back it down, and then repeat the process of adding weight, you will progress on it. It really is that simple. Just get your form down, learn to get tight, pull the slack out of the bar, and row. And after that, it's just a matter of progression, rest, recovery, and fuel. It's as simple as that. That's the only tips that you need. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.